Hey there, good afternoon to you. 506 here on News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Democrat turned not Democrat, but basically still a Democrat. RFK Jr. announcing yesterday he's got a running mate now, and she's filthy rich.
I'm so proud to introduce to you the next Vice President of the United States, my fellow lawyer, a brilliant scientist, technologist, a fierce warrior mom, Nicole Shanahan.
And the crowd goes wild for the person they didn't know until 5 minutes ago. Nicole Shanahan, woo! Nicole Shanahan got on stage yesterday and was making appeals to both Republicans and Democrats.
That's why I see so many Republicans disillusioned with their party as I become disillusioned with mine. If you are one of those disillusioned Republicans,
There's a man screaming in pain in the background.
Welcome you to join me, a disillusioned Democrat, in this movement to unify and heal America. This independent movement comes at a time of extreme division in America that threatens to tear this country apart. Yes. Let's fix it.
Yeah, the guy's still screaming in pain in the background. Matt Boyle joins us now. He's a Washington Bureau Chief for Breitbart News, and he knows all about this. Matt, good to talk to you today, sir.
Vince, great to be here, brother. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. All right, so Nicole Shanahan, I understand she is the ex-wife to Google's Sergey Brin, who's the co-founder of Google, meaning she has a lot of money. That's wind in the sails of the RFK campaign. What else should we know about her?
Yeah, look, she's somebody who's funded criminal justice reform, leftist, soft on crime policy. She's donated to Joe Biden. She's donated to other top Democrats. Just a total leftist, right? And by the way, she seems to be like a gadfly of Silicon Valley, right? Like she goes around from one Silicon Valley billionaire to the next, and there were reports of her that, by the way, to be fair to her and to Elon Musk, that they've denied, but that they apparently hooked up briefly after her divorce from Brin, the Google co-founder. But look, the big picture here is that she's Mrs. Moneybags on the left, right? Like, so she's loaded, and she's now RFK's sugar mama, right? Like, yeah. And so what she's going to do is she's going to fund the whole effort to get him on the ballot in all these places, and also appeal heavily. I know that she's trying to go out there and appeal the disaffected Republicans and disillusioned Republicans. I don't think that works, right? Like, she appeals to disillusioned Democrats, right? Like, and so the people who have got to be freaking out the most about this right now are at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, right? Like the president and Vice President Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, they're looking at this saying, "Oh my gosh, this is terrible." And the view from Mar-a-Lago is very, very, very nice right now. I know that Trump feels like he dodged a bullet here, because there was talk that RFK was going to try to bring in some, major conservative powerhouse Republican type, as his vice president, and try to do some kind of a unity ticket or something like that, and that wouldn't be good for Trump. If anything now, with RFK, who's, with the exception maybe of his anti-vax type views for the most part, is a total leftist Democrat, right? Like, if you look at his views on Supreme Court justices, on taxation, on literally every single issue, the guy's a Democrat, right? Like, and so you got that combined with this vice presidential pick. If anything, yes, the RFK ticket will pull votes from Trump, but they'll pull more votes from Biden, and that is dangerous for Joe Biden going into this election.
Yes, the math is very good for Trump with RFK on the ballot, and her money is going to mean a lot more states are going to have that. And of course, they'll concentrate on some of those big states, those swing states. And you're right. I'm seeing article after article right now, especially in places like the New York Times, about Democrats are panicking about RFK's inclusion on the ballot. They're also worried about other third-party candidates like Cornel West. But West, of course, does not have the financial backing to be able to stage the kind of disruptive get-on-the-ballot effort that RFK seems to be doing. But I will say one of the features of this is that the left is very nervous about the voters. They do not like the idea that voters are going to have alternatives to Biden on the ballot. If there's a through line here in terms of all of these candidates, The Biden people and the people around Biden who want to see him win have been trying to take Trump off of the ballot. And simultaneously, they're now fighting to keep RFK from getting on the ballot. What does that tell you about their policies and their appeal among the American people?
Well, this is from the same party that says that democracy is under attack, right?
Yeah.
Like democracy itself is under attack, yet they don't want people to have a choice, right? So at the end of the day, I'm of the mindset that more third-party candidates is better for Trump. If you look at the big difference between 2016 and 2020 is that there weren't third-party candidates on the ballot. In states like Minnesota or New Mexico, for instance, by the way, I mean, you're talking about like very slim margins, right? Like where the differences between Trump and Hillary in 2016. In states like Pennsylvania, in states like Michigan, Wisconsin, et cetera, Jill Stein might have been the difference in a lot of those places. And Gary Johnson, the libertarian, who was a very strong libertarian candidate that year, also similarly. And I don't think Gary Johnson really pulled votes from Trump so much as he pulled votes from Hillary. So at the end of the day, the strong third-party candidate situation tends to help the Republican. You look back at, for instance, the 2000 election, right? Like Ralph Nader, strong Green Party candidate, and, maybe was the difference between President George W. Bush and President Al Gore, right? And so I do think that they're panicking right now. And in 2020, though, to their credit, the Biden people and the Democrats were able to mitigate the third-party candidates in a lot of, in a serious way. So this time around, it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to do that. And again, at the hypocrisy level here, the Democrats are screaming about democracy, yet they're the ones trying to strip people off the ballot.
Now, some of these candidates, or at least the people who have been advocating for them, have been making the argument in order to justify their candidacy. Well, one, we're not playing spoiler, is kind of what they say, because a lot of the voters that we're going to appeal to are people who would have otherwise sat the election out. But instead, they see, oh, Robert F. Kennedy's on the ballot? Okay, I'll go. I'll cast my ballot this year. Now, if that's the case, of course, there will be voters who are like that, who would have otherwise sat out, who will pull the lever for a guy like RFK. If they do that, there is some peril here for Republicans down ballot, isn't there? If you have some Democrats who are showing up who would not have otherwise voted.
Oh, absolutely. There's all sorts of different implications that could happen down ticket. But at the end of the day, though, I think that the vast majority of this is that the lack of a binary choice ends up helping probably a Trump candidate. Trump has a very strong high floor, right? But he also has a ceiling that's maybe a little bit lower than Biden in a general election, right? Trump's going to get his 40-something% in all of these key states, right? The question is, can he win with 48% rather than 51%, right? And so at the presidential level, it helps Trump. At the down ticket level, I don't know how this all plays out in a variety of these different places.
Sure.
It might be different in different states, right? It might be, and some of these states too, you might have third-party Senate candidates or third-party, multi-way races, in that regard, right? Arizona's one that comes to mind. I don't know what Kirsten Sinema is going to end up doing there. I don't think she's announced it yet. New Jersey is another possibility, right? In that Senator Menendez may end up deciding to run as an independent, depending on his legal battle outcomes. So it just kind of depends what the impact will be down ticket. But when the people that are voting for Trump at the top of the ticket, they're going to vote Republican all the way up and down, right? And so. For the most part, there might be a little bit of crossover, but probably not that much. So it may have a little bit of an impact, But I don't think it'll have that big of an impact.
Yeah, and it's just something to be on guard for, to think about before people become enthusiastically pro, I'm glad RFK is out there. Well, it's a little complicated, but in the end, he's probably going to help Trump based on everything we're seeing and what Matt Boyle's saying from Breitbart. I think you're right about that. Now, back to the running mate here, though, Nicole Shanahan. You mentioned that she's been very supportive of a bunch of left-wing causes. That includes also dumping a ton of money into George Gascon's campaign in Los Angeles. The district attorney there has been an utter disaster.
as radical as they come, right? So if you're worried about crime in big cities, I mean, this guy is like the poster child, maybe up there with Chicago and in Philadelphia as for like one of the worst ones in the country. There's been efforts to recall him, the district attorney there. It's just terrible. And so again, the fact that she's financially tied to this, and again, look at where people put their money, right? Like she put her money into efforts to back him, to back Gascon in Los Angeles. So that tells you a lot about what it is that she actually believes.
Yeah.
So she will try to go out there and sound a little bit more reasonable than that during the course of this campaign. But look, we know where her money is. It's with these Soros-funded lefty insane prosecutors.
And she's tried to back down from it a little bit, I think. I believe I saw a quote from her to Fox in the last 24 hours suggesting that she has some regret about Gascon's tenure. But she should have regret about his tenure because he was releasing criminals who would go on to then murder people. And that is obviously like the worst possible outcome you could imagine. And that's what happened by way of the candidate that she funded.
Right. And by the way, that's going to be a major issue in this election. Look, the last time I was with President Trump, we talked at length about crime being a major issue. I believe that immigration obviously also tied very closely with crime. You see the Angel families, you see the Laken Riley situation. Look, these stories, you hear them all the time. And one would imagine that that type of a narrative, that type of a storyline is not going to play well with voters in the heartland and Rust Belt states, right? Like they want to see security.
By the way, you just interviewed Trump a couple weeks ago, didn't you?
Yes, was just with him again. Been with him many times over the course of the last several years, but yeah, was just with him again a couple of weeks ago. Yep.
And where did you do did you do the interview in person or were you over the phone with him?
Yeah, in person in Mar-a-Lago. So it was Alex Marlow and I, our editor-in-chief of Breitbart, and I. We sat down with him for about 90 minutes at Mar-a-Lago. It was his first print interview after he won the nomination, after he got across the delegate threshold. And so we've been kind of doing these like long-form print interviews. I like doing that with Trump. Honestly, it's better than being on camera with him.
Way better.
Because you kind of get a little bit more in depth, and he'll go on and off the record during the course of the conversation, and he'll kind of explain to you what it is that he's thinking and why he's doing what he's doing and what he thinks about this person or that person, and you kind of get a little bit more drilled down than what the average, what you see on the rally stage or in a TV ad or in a truth post.
And one thing I think that people, they may realize, I mean, I guess this comes out in the news, but something that people might not realize is that Trump is always asking the people he's speaking to, that would include Matt Boyle, who we're talking to right now, what he thinks, what Matt thinks of how things are going, how he's doing. He's constantly kind of measuring his success based on how other people view what's going on with the campaign.
Not only is he asking you about him, I always tell people this because I've interviewed Trump like probably as much as or more than anybody else out there in the media over the years. And I always tell this about, I've interviewed so many senators, governors, politicians all over the planet, all over the world. He's the only guy who asks questions back at you. And sometimes the questions are about him or what do you think about what he did on this or that or the other thing, but he'll also ask about various issues. He'll ask what you think about other people, right? He'll ask what you think about this thing or that thing. He'll ask what you think about what happened at the Oscars, right? Like, and so it's a really informative thing, and I think that I always tell people you don't think of it when you think of Trump because you think of the caricature that the media puts out about him.
Sure, but
he's an excellent listener. And that's a quality of an excellent listener. And I think that he refines who he is and what he talks about and what he zones in on based off the feedback that he's getting.
For sure. And you can definitely detect it. So that leads me to this question then, Matt Boyle. And thank you, as always, for coming on. In your view, having talked to the guy a bunch of times, how is his spirit in this campaign versus in the past? And this includes... these are the most attacks that have ever been launched against him simultaneously. So he's taking a lot of incoming. How would you measure his enthusiasm for this campaign and his spirit now as a candidate?
I would say that he understands the gravity of the moment for both himself and the country, but he's also the same happy warrior he's ever been, right? Like, and so he's marching right into the fight. He's going to give it the best that he possibly can and let the chips fall where they may. But at the same time, I do think that he understands the gravity of the situation here. Look, at the end of the day, if he doesn't win this election, the left is going to throw him in prison, right? Like, I mean, that's pretty clear, right? Like, he's gotten pretty lucky with the timing of the trials and the appeals and all this stuff, right? Like, that it's not playing out that way, that it will happen before the election. But the fact is that if it doesn't go, so I mean, it literally comes down to that, right? Like, do you think Trump should be thrown in jail or not? And if you do, then vote against him. But if you don't, then I think he's got to win, because if he wins, then he fires Jack Smith. Those federal cases go away very quickly, and then the state cases will fizzle out over the course of time, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it really comes down to that, right? Like, so I think he understands that, and how serious this is, but also, what the country faces. Look at what all the major things that have happened in our country over the last just few years, right? Like, the border is totally out of control. We see the inflation. We see the economy blowing up. The world is on fire, right? Like, I mean, this place, if you give Joe Biden one more term, I don't think that this country will ever be the same again.
And
right?
if Trump is the latest political opponent that they are able to imprison, because they've been doing that quite a bit, their appetite for doing a lot more of that is only going to grow. So it's not just about Trump. There's very far-reaching implications there for that kind of tyranny. I got to leave it there, but as always, I can't recommend Breitbart enough. And Matt Boyle, thank you for your time today, sir. Really appreciate that.
You bet, Vince. Anytime, brother.
Hey, good afternoon to you. It's now 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The good thing, there are some Republicans in power who are fighting back against some of the chaos going on in the country right now. I figured it's probably worth you hearing some of these stories. I want to start with something called squatting, where you go into somebody's home, or you maybe were paying rent for a time and then you stop paying rent and you decide you're just going to stay there. And then you get to live there rent-free and the homeowner can't do anything about it. They call that squatter's rights. You can just steal someone's property and the law endorses it. In fact, illegal aliens are becoming increasingly aware of that ability in the United States and various states across the country. Just a week ago, we had an illegal immigrant from Venezuela going on TikTok and advising 500,000 of his followers that they can invade American homes and then invoke squatters' rights to stay there. I've got a little bit of audio for you. This is the New York Post's version, so they've got some music underneath it, but they run a translation on screen, so I'll read along. My people, I've thought about invading a house in the United States because I learned that there is a law that says that if a house is not inhabited, we can expropriate it. You can take it. The video racked up nearly 4 million views, and the Venezuelan TikToker by the name of Lionel Moreno tells his fellow migrants, it would be illegal aliens, that if a house is not inhabited, we can seize it. Again, at what point do we say that this is an invasion? Like, at what point do we use that in terms of our language here? Millions of people pouring across the border and seizing homes. Is that an invasion or no? Or we have not met the threshold, Vince. Not yet. Not yet. Steady, steady. Not an invasion yet. Not an invasion yet. Well, the good news today is that at least one Republican governor is fighting back against this to an extent. Ron DeSantis down in Florida announced today that he has signed into law an effort to eliminate squatters' rights in the Sunshine State, and they are increasing penalties against the people who would, steal someone's home. Here's Ron DeSantis today announcing that he not only has signed the new legislation, but it's for a good cause. Take a listen.
Florida, we say very simply, what passes muster in New York and California is not passing muster here. You are not going to be able to commandeer somebody's private property and expect to get away with it. We are, in the state of Florida, ending the squatter scam once and for all. And
And remember, Joe Biden's position is that you should be able to steal somebody's house. He kept arguing for a so-called eviction moratorium to be extended into forever. As the Supreme Court said, this is unconstitutional. You can't say that renters can skip paying their rent. You're sticking landlords with the bag. The people who own the house don't have access to it, and they're not getting any money for people living within it. You can't do that. And Joe Biden said, oh, yes, I can. I'm going to keep doing it.
Momentarily, I'll be signing HB 621, which will give the homeowner the ability to quickly and legally remove a squatter from a property, and which will increase criminal penalties for squatting. Now, we have not had the same type of issues here as you've seen in California or New York. Nevertheless, our laws were really geared towards this not necessarily being a fad. You know, this idea of squatting, you know, when you had the Old West and people would settle the West, you'd show up, there'd be a place, so people would settle. They'd create a community. Well, to have someone come 7, 8 years later and say they own the property after all this, you understood why, you know, that was done in that way. That was never intended to empower somebody to just invade some residential subdivision and illegally occupy somebody's private residence. So what we're doing today is recognizing that, but I think more importantly, providing very swift remedies, because what the squatters know is even when they're in the wrong, it's a massive process many times before they can be evicted, and a lot of times the process is very expensive. And so we don't want the law to have the thumb on the scale in favor of people that are violating the law.
Yeah. What was it? Did Ron DeSantis at one point, didn't he say Florida was where woke goes to die or something like that? That's a good line, but also it's where absurdity goes to die. It is absurd that you could steal someone's property and the law would be on the side of the thief. So good for him, good for them, the Republicans in Florida getting this passed in order to prevent the squatter insanity. On the phone now, line 2, Leo's in Colorado. Leo, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Good afternoon.
Hey, sir.
Got to tell you, as much as I hate this liberal state, I found out a 3 weeks ago that they do not allow squatters' rights in this state. And what surprises me is the homelessness, when they legalized marijuana, went through the roof, but they do not allow people to come in. They will remove you. And you think, as cold as it is and everything else up here, that they'd allow it, but they don't. They really don't.
Really?
And I think this needs, I think this is something they need to take nationwide and really just say enough is enough.
You know what, as you're talking about it, it makes me think, you know what this should be?
Yes.
This should be a ballot referendum. Put it on the ballot.
Yes.
So just have voters across the country, you just ask very simply, can people steal your house? Yes or no? And there's some version of that. Put it on the ballot. It'll be a great turnout method. You know, the left uses, so in Colorado, for example, like the left uses weed as a way to turn out ne'er-do-well voters. They're like, oh, what are we going to do? We'll add weed to the ballot, and maybe we'll get people who never show up to actually show up for once, and then they'll vote for a bunch of Democrats. That's how they operate. The right can be like, no, actually, you're entitled to own your own property and not have someone steal it. Maybe it should be a ballot referendum nationwide. I mean, if Colorado, as high as that state is, and I don't mean, geographically, as high as that state is, if they can figure it out, the rest of us can figure it out too, can't we?
Amen, brother. Amen. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Leo. Thanks so much for the call.
Right. Thanks.
I appreciate it as
Bye-bye.
always. Yeah, no, that's fascinating. It's fascinating. Yeah, squat. Nobody's for that. Nobody's for having their goods stolen. And so, put it on the ballot. That might be a good way to handle this. I also have another piece of good DeSantis news for you today. DeSantis has apparently won his war against Disney. Remember the fight over that little district that's supposed to be where Disney World is, the Reedy Creek district, and how they've been battling it out, and Disney had put all of these last-second control mechanisms in place to say, oh, actually, we control the area. The Tampa Free Press has a report on this today. There's a lot of reports on this subject, but the Tampa Free Press is from where I'm quoting. Disney drops lawsuits against Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, concedes last-minute deal void. Disney has withdrawn its lawsuits against the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District and acknowledges that the development agreement made at the last minute is invalid and unenforceable. Disney's Reedy Creek Improvement District was replaced with the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District, a citizen accountable entity, after Governor DeSantis signed House Bill 9B into law in February of 2023. Quote, "There's a new sheriff in town," said DeSantis at the time, "and accountability will be the order of the day." The law removed parts of the district's authority, such as the power to potentially construct a nuclear power plant, an airport, a stadium. Hours before this Central Florida Tourism Oversight District took authority, Disney entered into a last-minute development agreement with the former Reedy Creek Board to grant itself additional powers and perpetual property rights. Mainstream media outlets celebrated Disney's move with headlines such as "Out-negotiated by Mickey Mouse." Ron DeSantis' board rages against Disney World after legal humiliation. And Disney struck a second secret agreement to mess up DeSantis' power grab on the company, official says. Florida Governor DeSantis' comms director, Brian Griffin, said Wednesday, quote, "As usual, the media were wrong." Today's settlement also includes acknowledgement from Disney that the last-minute development agreement is null and void, having no legal effect or enforceability, and stipulates the same to other similar restrictive covenants and comprehensive plan amendments made prior to the CFTOD. That's that Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. So anyway, here's the summary. DeSantis won, and more importantly, the people of Florida won. Disney was wrapped up in advocating for all sorts of insanity against families in Florida and across the country for that matter. And you had the people of Florida go, wait a second, why did we give Disney a special deal? Every other district in the area, every other theme park, every other homeowner, business owner, we've all got to play by the same rules, but Disney has these special carve-outs. Why is that? And how is this to our benefit? So not only do they have special privileges that nobody else has in the state, but they're using their privileged position to attack families in Florida? Okay, your privileges are going away. No more of that. How is that helping us? And so Ron DeSantis intervenes, and a big success now. This is the kind of thing that, the media is broadly reporting, oh, they reached some sort of deal today, and they don't give you many of the details. That's not what we're doing. I want to give you the details and make it really obvious here. Disney has waved the white flag of surrender. And they're in the midst of a lot of chaos at that company right now, including that nothing that they produce is interesting. Or I'm telling you, one of the easiest things I ever did was cancel Disney Plus. And I'm the father of a kid who used to like Disney Plus. We can't find anything on it that we'd even want to watch. So canceling Disney Plus was one of the easiest things in the whole world. It's all just like left-wing claptrap that doesn't have good story development. They're all rehashed ideas. There's nothing new and original. It's all terrible. Easiest decision in the world. Sorry, Disney, you're not getting my money. Not getting my money. Not at all. And it made it even easier because you have nothing worth watching. So that's what Disney is up to. Meanwhile, another piece of good news out of a Republican governor, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, who, by the way, is reeling a bit today at the collapse of his plan to try and move that sports arena, the to Virginia. We'll set that aside. That's not on the success list for him. Although I imagine there's plenty of people in Northern Virginia perfectly happy not to have immense new professional sports team traffic added to the already busy region, and also didn't want to offer a bunch of tax benefits to, the sports teams. But here you have Glenn Youngkin yesterday, he vetoed more than 24 left-wing insano gun bills that made its way to his desk. Because, of course, the whole General Assembly now controlled by these insane Democrats who are trying to go after one of the reasons why Virginia is the preferable state to live in the region. I mean, I talk to people all the time who have come to this region because, as you know, Washington, D.C. is full of lots of transient people. Lots of people who didn't grow up here, but have now made it their home. And when they have to decide where to live, especially if they work in the district, they have their pick of basically three states, or well, 2 states and a district. Maryland, Virginia, or D.C. And so you in my case, when I got to this area, I'm trying to figure out, where am I going to live? Where am I going to rent a house? What's that going to be like? On paper, you start looking at, make all the comparisons. You're like, okay, where would I go? Maryland, D.C., Virginia. And when you get to Virginia, Virginia has all the advantages. It has all the advantages. Virginia, at least it used to. That's obviously rapidly changing thanks to the left. But the crime picture was better in Virginia. Crime, 1. Taxes were better in Virginia. 2. Guns, a lot better in Virginia than places like Maryland and D.C. That has been the case. But the left, in its never-ending quest to destroy all things that are good, is trying to rob Virginia of its decency when it comes to respect for the Second Amendment. So yesterday, Glenn Youngkin vetoed more than 24 of these insane gun bills and said, no, they're not coming to pass. They're not coming to fruition. Fox says one of the top pieces of legislation Youngkin vetoed would have made it a misdemeanor to import, sell, manufacture, purchase, or transfer so-called assault firearms. This is how the left talks about the guns, which are typically understood to be semi-automatic firearms, such as AR-15s. So they wanted to make it illegal to buy AR-15s, which are the single most popular rifle in the country, that platform, and high-capacity magazines made after July 1st, which, again, they're trying to deprive you and your family of safety. That's the goal. And to Youngkin's credit, he vetoed all of this nonsense yesterday. So, yeah, he's the only thing, we're hanging on by a Republican governor. That's it. It's the Democrats that control the House and in the Senate in Virginia. If they had their way, and if they had somebody like Terry McAuliffe in place, thank God he's not, things would look very different today. So my gratitude to Glenn Youngkin on this for taking up the effort to protect gun rights. Good for him. And it's not good. We need a better picture than that. We can't have just one guy in the way of this nonsense. And yet he's the guy for now. So thanks to him for that. Let's take a quick phone call. I've got Glenn in Sarasota, Florida, line 1. Glenn, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. How are you doing, sir? Good to hear from you, or good to speak to you again.
Thank you.
Hey, I just wanted to call, and I heard you all talking about the great state of Florida down here, and we're very proud to be down here. We were Northerners up to 2020, and then we moved south for the weather. But I've come to know a lot of people down here and seen a lot of people from all over the country. And
yeah,
we combat this down here with people coming in and moving in because it is beautiful, free state and everything. But their politics they're leaving New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, all the liberal states, and they come down and we openly just tell them, hey, you're welcome here in Florida. Just don't bring your politics down here.
Yeah, don't raise our taxes. You have no income tax in Florida. Why would you want to change that? But the left loves making things worse, unfortunately. Hopefully you can evangelize them out of it. Glenn, thank you. By the way, I do have some breaking news for you. We'll find out more about it on the news breaks. But we are being told now Joseph Lieberman, the former senator, has passed away at the age of 82 due to complications from a fall, according to his family. Again, 82 years old, complications from a fall. You'll remember, of course, he was running mate to Al Gore back in 2000. May he rest in peace. The great one, Mark Levin, is up next here on WMAL.